Hey there, everyone. Art Burns here, wishing you well today. So, one of the most common and most important things that we do every single day, all day, every day, right, is communicate, right? Whenever we're with another person, or even when we're not with other people, we're most often communicating. And anything we want to get done almost always requires communication between people, right? Whether it's our coworkers, our employers, our employees, our parents, our children, our, even strangers and, people in stores and, wherever it is, whatever area of our lives that we're talking about, where the communication is always present, right? It's always something that is going on, right? And so it stands to reason that one of the most important benefits of mindfulness practices and the awareness that we bring to ourselves and the emotional intelligence that we develop through these practices is how it applies to communication, right? Now, oftentimes I talk about the listening end of communication in terms of mindfulness, right? Because this is a really big issue, right? Like when we're listening to one another, normally we're listening to reply, right? We're just kind of formulating our reply in our mind as the person's talking to us, and we're waiting for a pause so that we can give our point of view, right? This is how instinctively most of us wind up communicating, right? And of course, while we're thinking about our reply, we're not truly listening to the other person, right? So active listening is a very, very important skill and something that is very vital to success in any area of life, right? Especially with parents, especially at work, but it's vital everywhere, right? But the other side of the communication, right, the speaking side is equally as important, right? As we develop non-judging awareness through mindfulness practices, right? Simple practices, just being present with our thoughts, our emotions, our sensations, and the ability to focus our mind in the midst of this sort of swirling sea of these aspects of our mental activity, right? The swirling sea of the emotions, the thoughts, the sensations that go on in our bodies. As we learn and train ourselves to focus in the midst of all of this activity, what we can do is one of the things that automatically comes is the ability to see how we are speaking, right? Mindfulness of our words, right? Mindfulness of how we're saying what we're saying, mindfulness of the words that we're using, and most of all, mindfulness of the empathy that the other person is going to feel as a result of our speaking, right? And so this is a very, very crucial part of life. Like I said, every part of your life includes communicating on some level, right? And so when you can be mindful of the words that you're using and the tone that you're using them, and again, how the words that you're using are going to affect the other person who's listening to you, right? This facilitates a true, exchange of ideas and in the benefit of everybody involved, right? And I can't overstate rather how important this skill and this quality of communication can be, right? Now, there's lots of different ways to look at this, or there's different sort of facets of what I'm talking about, right? So there are the words that you choose, right? So for instance, when you are talking to somebody, right, whether, let's say it's one of your children, right? If you say something like, if you use a you-based statement, right? Like, when you do this, I get upset. Right? Like, that is putting someone on the defensive. And it doesn't just have to be your children, right? This could be at work, this could be in a store, this could be anywhere. Anytime somebody hears, like, the you statement, it's, again, the empathy. Think of how that feels when somebody hears that, right? It's like you're going to automatically be put on the defensive, right? So if we change that around and we say instead, I get triggered when this thing happens. Right now, what you've done is you've created a space where we can both contribute to something, right? It's no longer like, oh, it's on me. Like, I did something to upset you, right? And again, this is especially true with people who are either reporting to us at work or our children who are looking up to us and who are always kind of sensing our, emotional kind of temperature, right? And so if we're feeling, if they sense a tension in us and then we use that you statement, they're shutting down, right? They are shutting right down. They are stepping back. They're going back into a shell. They're covering up because they're afraid, right? And so again, in the awareness that we develop through these skill building exercises, we can understand, like, am I using language that might put somebody else on the defensive, or am I using language that is neutral and inviting of collaboration, right? Communication is based on the word commune, right, which means to come together, right? So when we're in communication, what we're trying to do, or ideally what's happening, is we're bringing people in, right? We're not pushing people away. And so now, of course, this includes more than just the words that you're using, right? Because you can also bring awareness to your tone and your body language, and bring awareness to your, emotional state. Because remember, as I've talked about here in the past, we all have this empathic resonance that's going on, right? So even though you're telling me that you feel okay and you're putting a smile on your face and you're kind of working through something, if there's something that's really tense within you, I'm going to sense it. I might even realize that I sense it, but I'm going to sense it. And so being aware of that within ourselves allows us to, again, either change it if we can, or choose to either engage or not engage at this particular moment, or put this right out there. Tell somebody, like, listen, I'm having a really bad day today. This morning I had this thing happen. I got, a flat tire or something. I've just been in a funk all day. So please excuse me if I don't feel like I'm myself, right? Now let's have this conversation, right? Now all of a sudden the other person is like, okay, I got something, we have something to work with now, right? But again, ideally, if you can put off a different, delicate conversation when you're not feeling 100%, well, that's a choice that you can make, and that's maybe a good choice to make, right? And this is especially true with parenting, right? Like when your child spills the Cheerios, right? And you're feeling that, that you're in that place, like, don't try to teach the child right now about the Cheerios, right? Because right now, that message is not going to be received, because again, your child is going to sense your emotional difficulty that you're feeling. And so maybe it would be better to just clean up the Cheerios. If you can, maybe go meditate, maybe, take a shower, take a nap, have a cup of tea to relax, do something to sort of reset yourself. And when you feel better, now talk to your child about how to be more careful with a bowl of cereal so that it doesn't spill. We don't waste food. We don't spill, we don't cause a mess and make mom or dad, clean up after you, because now it's a constructive thing. And again, the words that you use, the tone that you use become very important, right? Like saying to your child, like, when you spill that cereal, it makes me work harder. Instead of saying that, you could say something like, I would rather not have to, clean up cereal. So do you think there's any way we could talk about how to be more careful? Right? Do you see the difference there, right? One is, the other is, come here, let's talk. Let's kind of, talk this over and collaborate on this, right? And so this is really important. Again, with parenting, I mean, it's beyond important to talk about how we choose our words and how we choose our body language and how we choose our tone. And another really very, very helpful thing for parenting, okay, is that, and by the way, I'll remind you again, I'm about to start this really cool course about connecting with your kids as parents, and this is something that's really important for that, okay? Something that we could refer to as a conditional yes, okay? Children are always asking for things, right? And this could also work for adults too, right? Like it's definitely like a little bit more of a psychology thing for adults. I guess it's psychology for everybody, but it certainly applies to children. But it could also apply if you're a manager of people, or or you're you have people working for you at your house or something like that. Consider this, right? Consider this idea, because it can always sort of smooth things and create more of a possibility for positive positive outcome, right? So what we're talking about is conditional yes. Now again, really easy to visualize it with children, because children are always asking for things, right? They're always, can I have this? Can I have that? I want a cupcake, I want a donut, I want a new toy, I want a new gadget, can I download a new game for my Nintendo Switch, and on and on and on and on and on, right? You're gonna hear that all day. And all the parents out there know that. And if you're a new parent, then brace yourself for it, because it's going to happen. That's the way kids are. That's the way kids operate, And so when a child asks you for something, right, there's two ways that you can respond, right? Three ways you can respond, right? You could either give them that thing, right, which of course this gets into issues of spoiling and overindulgence, and so we got to be careful of that, right? You don't want to give a child a cookie every time they ask for a cookie, right? You want to ask them, maybe some broccoli would be better, You don't want to give a kid a toy every time they ask for a toy, because that's going to get them to feel like they always are going to get a toy. And then of course that one time you say no, then there's a tantrum, then you give in, and then they feel like, okay, every time I need something I just throw a tantrum, and then that sets up a really sort of difficult thing between you and child, and also not helping your child in the long run, right? So that's the yes, right, which is filled with its own pitfalls. Then there's the no, right? So to simply say no, right? Like, can I have the no? Can I have no? Right? What's that doing, right? That's shutting down. Again, now, if your child, senses that there's something emotional going on, at the same time you're just like, no, then that child is going to, kind of retreat back into its shell a little bit, into his or her shell a little bit, and feel a little bit like, this, I'm sad, right? And I'm hurting, and this is going to cause emotional issues, right? Now, of course, saying no doesn't have to just be no. It can also be, just no, not now, I'm sorry, you can't do that, or no, I'm afraid we can't do that right now, or no, you can't have another cookie because you need to eat your vegetables, and of course this is true. Now, but what it does though is it's the same kind of thing that I talked about with the you statement, right? By saying no, even if you say it very nicely, you're setting a barricade, right? You're pushing the child away, right? Or at least holding it back, right? Holding the child back. I don't mean to call it, right? But he or she, or it, you're holding the child back, right? You're setting a boundary between you and your child. So much research out there, from pediatricians to child psychologists, are telling us that connection is one of the most important things we can do for our children, right? And so again, just like those you statements versus I statements, to say no is creating a barrier and pushing the child away, which is the opposite of connecting. So the alternative, right? So what do? If you say yes too much, you're spoiling. If you say no, you're pushing your child away. Okay, so Art, what the heck do I do? Well, conditional yes, right? So, and again, this is possible in the office as well, right? Like, when the child asks for something that you feel like maybe it's not a great idea to give that child that thing right now, right? You say, well, let's see how the rest of the day goes, and maybe we can do that later, right? Or if you eat your broccoli, then yes, you can have another cookie. I'd be happy to give you another cookie, right? What we do then is that gives the child a chance to maybe ask a question, or maybe pose another idea, or and then your job as a parent, our job as parents, is to honor those ideas and to really engage with the child and let the child have a say in this process, right? This is going to build the child's emotional resilience and regulation, and also going to connect you to the child, and that connection, again, the studies are just profound, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into proper development for children, school, social situations, exercise, diet, of course, all of these things do. But the one thing as parents we really can do something about, right? We really can control, is that connection. And that connection is shown to be as much, if not more powerful than all of those other aspects of child development. And so, now again, this is not just for children, right? Even in the office, right? If somebody asks you to do something, instead of saying, no, I can't do that right now, right? Which is, again, pushing away and putting the other person maybe on a little bit of a defensive mode, right? Instead, we can say something like, if circumstances were different, I'd be happy to help you, but I'm just not able to do it right now. Do you see the difference between that? right? And so again, when we're practicing mindfulness, this awareness is going to come to us naturally. But most importantly, when we practice mindfulness, especially when you practice it with me, we learn to pause. Right? We learn to simply take a little pause when we're, when we experience something, take a breath and say, in that breath, in that pause, in that space in between what somebody asks you and your answer to them, in that space lies your power to choose the best course of action. And in that space, you can bring the awareness to think about, okay, how is this next thing I'm about to say going to feel for this other person? Is it going to push them away? Is it going to bring them in? And in that space, in that ability to pause, that's where you're going to be able to create smooth conversations that are going to be more fruitful and more. And again, there's nothing more important than communication in this world, because we're always communicating. Right? It's how we get what we need. It's how we deliver what we want to give. It's how we express our love. It's how we express our pain. It's how we express our needs. It's everything. Okay, and so this is one of the really profound aspects, one of the profound benefits of the practices that I talk about. Okay, so if you want to learn more, you know the drill. Hit me up with a comment, send me a direct message, and let me know. Okay, and by the way, my son keeps telling me, I got to tell you, subscribe and like this video because apparently that's a thing for YouTube. So please subscribe and like this video. If you do like it, give it a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, as my son says, and I thank you for listening. And I'll be back again tomorrow, and I look forward to it. And I wish you well. Have a good day, everybody.